as somebody that's been a Whitecap season ticket holder since 2010 at Swangard and transitioning over to MLS with my granddad, Thomas Müller to the Whitecaps is more exciting to me than Cristiano Ronaldo signing with the Whitecaps, because Thomas Müller is just a player that I've loved watching, since I was little. That I'm just pumped and excited and like jittery to see him in a Whitecap shirt.
Man, it's really exciting. And, to our points there about how Vancouver does seem like such an appealing, obvious destination, but it hasn't been for the Whitecaps, and be that they haven't marketed well, the team hasn't been good. I do generally think that there are some players that feel forgotten in Canada in general. And we talk about the reality of Brian White and Sebastian Berhalter and Ryan Gauld, like not having the stock value that they deserve, because they're just kind of out of sight, out of mind. So I do feel that is a factor. Müller is different, and as Manu describes, like someone who would, I mean, I don't even understand how he's coming for that little money, like less than $2 million a season. What I wanted to ask Manu was, is this going to be an Ibra situation? When Ibra signed that first his first deal, I think on the first half season for the Galaxy, he was on like 1.1, but then the next year he was on 11. Like, is it going to work like that? Because I really don't understand why someone would put their body through that toll if you are going to take such little pay. Even, sure, he doesn't need the money, but like there's still got to be an element to it. There was, was there not more appealing playing scenarios or situations? Like it's that might not be like one direct answer from him, Alex, but I think that'd be interesting to kind of see as he settles in and becomes more, more of a talker.
Oh, I think there's reports out there that this is kind of one of those. It's going to be classic until MLS switches the calendar, where you come in halfway through the season, you kind of just fill whatever gaps available. In this case, no DP, TAM. There's possibility for season-ending injury, cap relief. We do have to remember as well the Whitecaps with the two major injuries they've been dealt. And then I think I saw the figure was 6-7 million next year for Müller, which would make a lot more sense. So, yeah, I think when you consider that, like financially, clearly the Whitecaps weren't like that's still, if it is that reported 6-7 million fee, I think Gauld at 3.5 is the most the Whitecaps have ever paid for a player by far per year. So they're clearly breaking the bank and, putting it on the line, so to speak. And we do forget, like we always say it, like Vancouver is an incredibly attractive destination. And it is kind of remarkable that they haven't been able to use that as more of a selling point. Of course, in sports, it feels like the discussions, are never actually about what's nicest. It ends up being things like taxes and, livability, kids, stuff like that. But in terms of like the actual city, especially for, a multimillionaire superstar, Vancouver is kind of hard to beat. So on the other hand, like, I'm not surprised. And I'm kind of with Manuel that it's like, it's crazy that it's taken this long for it to be an appeal, but it's fitting that it is a German star. And I guess that's to the point where with Ben, it does make sense, because like Müller is such a perfect Vancouver signing. Like if somehow a Ronaldo or someone flashier, I know, when Manuel mentioned Scandinavians, I kind of thought like, man, imagine Ibra in Vancouver. All those guys would almost feel out of place in Vancouver, because Vancouver is kind of a low-key West Coast vibe, chill, go on your bike. Like Müller screams that. Muller's one of those stars that he feels like someone who would bike to training, right? Like, and I feel like the fact that he's about to go to Vancouver fits this market so perfect.
I can't wait to see. I don't know who the partner is going to be, tell us or whatever, but I can't wait to see come to the Grand Fondo and ride with Müller, Thomas Müller, and get your picture taken at Whistler.
Well, the Whitecaps have already announced that there's going to be a workout class on the pitch at BC Place ahead of a game, and that entire comment section, I won't be there, but that's more of a Toronto thing too. In Vancouver, I'll be on my bike or hiking all the time, but that entire comment section on Instagram is just Thomas Müller memes, just waiting for him to be announced. But of course, Manuel is from Bavaria and from that area in Germany that he sees the translations to BC, but I was there for a week in the fall and it felt like home. Like the weather was the same. The nature was very similar. Like the types of trees were different, but very, very similar. The people seemed a lot similar as well in some ways, and kind of the way they went about things, that I'm not surprised that Thomas Müller picks Vancouver as a guy that's, so ingrained in that culture. Like he's grown up at FC Bayern Munich. He's grown up in Bavaria. that Vancouver is not that much of a difference. And I think that's why it's attractive to, as Manuel said, a lot of German tourists that will spend top dollar to come to Vancouver, because it is very similar in the same way that, a lot of people from Toronto will spend money to go to like New York and Miami, because it's similar cities that are just a little bit different, Brendan.
A former Premier League player who was linked to the Whitecaps at the beginning of the Carl Robinson era. He didn't join. He told me, and I've heard this from some other older players, that as they get to the point where they know they've had their biggest paycheck already, but they want to keep playing, or they want a new experience. One of the things that they consider is, how much does this tax my lifestyle? And by that I mean, is this player is English, in going to one of the farthest places on the continent, in bringing family over, or people he felt he was responsible to take care of their accommodations when they came to visit or needed to come to visit. That Vancouver in particular was a very expensive place for that, and taxing in both time and money. And I know that this is something that South Americans consider, and Central Americans consider when they come to MLS as well. And that might be like an under kind of rated thing, but I think that that's definitely, when it comes to like, what does the city offer me? I think that is something that some players consider. And I think that might be a factor of why Vancouver struggled to get, bigger names or match the appeal that you guys have described of being such a great city, because that is an element to it too, what it's like to be a temporary resident there. And who knows, maybe Muller will join Ancelotti and have a chalet in Whistler or wherever the hell it is in North Van that he lives. And I just can't wait until he's doing memes with or skits with Ryan Reynolds. Like, that has to happen.
He does ski, and FC Bayern has allowed him to ski. I don't think that's included in MLS standard player contracts.
After Manuel Neuer had that leg injury a few years ago, skiing, please.
No skiing.
Just take it off. When you retire, buy a chalet here, like Brendan mentions. You can ski all you want.
Well, buy it now, actually, and then you can use it in 4 years after you retire.
Or like go visit it. Like definitely snowshoeing. Maybe some cross country skiing can be more his speed. This is going to be something for a future episode, because I don't have the names off the top of my head, but we're going to have to do who would win, Messi and friends, Muller and friends. Now that I think about it, like we got to do some sort of like Lewandowski, Muller, Schweinsteiger, like that group of like Bayern players versus like, Messi, Suarez, Busquets, Alba. See who would win in like a 5-a-side or some sort of thing.
Man, it is super exciting to think at the prospect of like, what might the Thomas Müller effect be? Because I think we all knew that Messi signing was going to be massive for the league, big marketing. It's going to, it should put MLS mainstream. That was the hope. But we all knew that they were going to build a team around him of his friends. Like, it's still early to think about that. And maybe, Müller doesn't have as obvious, the big social circle, I guess. But I would love to see how their recruitment changes because of this window that you have with Thomas Müller. Like, are you calling Tony Cruz and be like, is there anything we can do to change your mind?
That's happening.
Is there anything we could do?
This guy left Real Madrid at his peak and just retired. So, but hey, I mean, I'm sure there's a couple other. What I really like about Müller, and I think again underrated standpoint, when Alphonso Davies went there, and like you go to such a big, intimidating dressing room, massive club. Like Müller was kind of the first guy to go out there and put his neck out for him and kind of be a leader. And, when Davies had his breakthrough moment, he had the famous, like, he's like a road runner, meep. Like, I think the leadership he's going to bring to these young guys, I just think of how cool it's going to be for a guy like Jivan Badwal, Surrey-born kid. He's been grinding out here. Now he's going to have a guy like Thomas Müller in his corner defending him. And I just think that's also going to be super cool for these youngsters to have that tree of Müller effect kind of play on the other side. Because I think what's unique with Müller, he's not maybe like some of those stars who are kind of just me. I'm coming here to do my thing. He seems like a genuine guy that's just going to care about everyone in the organization. It's kind of giving like a Chiellini, what Chiellini did with LAFC. And I think that's important with what sort of investment the Whitecaps have in young players and local players.
I also think there's going to be an importance of him not making absurd money either. Like, yeah, it's going to be, Sports Illustrated Germany is reporting that it's going to be 7.5 million as a DP in year 2, but coming in on the TAM salary, he's not going to be the highest paid player on the team. We've seen from, anonymous player polls, whether by The Athletic and other places, that salary disparity can cause issues within a locker room. And I think we saw that at Toronto FC in particular with the Italians when they were there. I don't think that's going to be an issue with Thomas Müller. He's not the highest paid player on the team to start off with. And also his approach, at least publicly, seems very much unlike that I think is going to allow him to gel with this team, because he's going to be on a similar price to, Matthias Laborda, I think, is on $600,000 or something close to that. So it will settle in, I think, salary-wise, quite smoothly, Brendan.
I think Ryan Gauld would admit, certainly privately, but I think he would admit publicly that he would expect Thomas Müller to make 3, 4, maybe even 5 times his salary, and not have an issue with that. But to your point, and Robin Fraser said this, as much as he really wanted to avoid speaking about Insigne Bernardeschi at all, he did say that the salary gap automatically creates a rift in the locker room, and you have to have a certain personality in order to smooth that over. And Grant Wall had in Grant Wall's book, The Beckham Experiment, there was a great explainer there. He's got some lengthy interviews with Landon Donovan, who was very open about how just Beckham wasn't a team guy at all. And he takes us out to this fancy steak place and didn't pick up the bill. And so Landon Donovan and whoever else was on more than $500,000 that season paid the bill, because there's 6 dudes at the table making $12,000 a year. They couldn't afford the $600 split or whatever it worked out to. I think that there's a lot to be said about the guys believing that they are a team, and when you have such a disparity in pay gap, even though there's an understanding of why there is a gap, it causes a real problem. So I really like the way things are falling here for Axel Schuster, man. It's so insane that at Christmas we were talking about this team might move. They're up for sale. Who knows what the future looks like? They don't have a manager, for God's sakes. Then they got some guy out of obscurity that seemed, good at Brøndby, but then kind of got run out. And you're like, well, what happened here? Why did this end like that? And now they're in a situation where they're real favorites, man. They're real favorites for MLS Cup. It's exciting.
It's a reminder. Sometimes when you sell things, you're not selling low. You're selling maybe a little high. Just something I know, because you're right. It's something from a big narrative standpoint. It is something really easy to say, because that's kind of been the story of the Whitecap season. Man, I can't believe it happened, despite the sale. But it is a good reminder that sometimes if you manage your assets properly, maybe you're selling on a bit of a high. And that feels like it's been the story of the Whitecap season. They kind of know where they are, and they've swung like it, and they've connected a lot more than they've used to in the past.
Look, I would hope that everything they're doing and all of the good we're talking about, though, just cements that they need a new stadium and that they need to stay, and not that it makes them more appealing or gets them $600 million and then they end up moving to Vegas for more than San Diego paid for an expansion fee. I want all of this goodness to just cement or solidify deeper roots in Vancouver, because that city deserves it, and this team is doing things now to earn that.
I don't think it can hurt, but I don't think it necessarily helps either. But if this team was, 15th in MLS, kind of middling in the middle, Brian White had 5 goals, it was a kind of another forgettable Whitecap season, then yeah, this would be a forgettable team and maybe not as attractive to keep in the league. But they were showing ambition. There's clearly some ambition from the current ownership group, and I wouldn't be shocked if a guy like Greg Kerfoot stays on in some sort of minority ownership role if he could. You look at the way the team's performing, the amount of fan interest that came along with that Champions Cup run, and what could come with a potential MLS Cup run, Supporters Shield, whatever comes in that this doesn't necessarily help a ton, but it can't hurt, because it's not a long-term investment. Who knows what they're going to be next year. 4 All-Stars. The Canucks had 4 or 5 All-Stars 2 years ago, and were bottom 5 in the NHL last year. It can go badly quickly, and there's no guarantee that this is sustained success for the Whitecaps, but it absolutely cannot hurt this team.
MLS is just such a unique situation. You look at the franchise values, for example, and when the Forbes list comes out of the top 30 most valuable clubs in the world, 18 MLS teams are on there. It's not entirely accurate, right? Ed Malion, who used to write for The Independent, and I think he was editor for The Athletic for a long time, he's part of this investment group that's bought Querétaro, and the number's a hell of a lot less for a Mexican team that had some trophies in the cabinet and had Ronaldinho at one point, had some relevancy, albeit maybe they're not relevant at the moment. That that purchase price is nowhere near any of these MLS expansion fees. And I think you got to go back to pre-Atlanta to get below 200 million, right? So I do think that the future of MLS ownership is like mega consortium. So if Ryan Reynolds is involved, he's like one of five. But who's to say he can justify putting 100 million in to be one of five, right? I don't know what the rest of that looks like, but it will make ownership like harder in the future. And I do think that if Kerfoot and Mallet really were looking to divest this and move on with their money, it's not an easy process. It's not an easy proposition. There's certainly not an easy sell.